Alrighty, welcome to another edition of Magus Talk. Today we're hosting Dr. J, and he's going to give us 2 weeks worth of dreams that are not really your normal types of dreams. They have the signature of the jinn. There's some serious karmic issues going on, and he's gone to the desert to address these issues, to have some time alone, so to speak, so he can ponder them. And the dreams are usually around these. And somebody might say, well, why are you having other entities come in, protectors of this and that? Why don't you have the jinn themselves pop up and do something? The reason is they have a certain economy, and their priority is to upgrade us, the one engaging with them, especially in alchemy such as this. The upgrade includes bolstering any kind of esoteric contacts that we naturally have. Maybe the connection is too weak, or maybe there's a trauma involved and it can't express, or maybe it itself is a part of us that's traumatized. This is almost like spiritual or esoteric first aid. And our energy system is reinforced, and our intellectual system is reinforced, and the mind is reinforced, and the consciousness is stimulated. Then you reach a point where you can engage with them more directly. And so we're easing into this. This isn't quite a preparation period. It is because both Jay and Tara have had time off. And so they need to reconnect. And when you do make a connection and then you stop it, that line still exists, but it's been exposed to the world, to your life, the natural purification of karma that it's probably needed before the next cycle of engagement comes in. Now, this is with them specifically. It doesn't involve what anybody else would be doing if they started something more organized from scratch. We're moving into a kind of unknown territory, you might say, that we are recognizing, and that is not dangerous because the connection is still valid. But this isn't the conventional approach of summoning something and then, like I said, having it do something for you. It already has the thing it needs to do. That's why it doesn't demand a contract. The agreement is already there for the upgrade. And then the jinn plug into the upgrade. Their resources are available because we are ready for them. We've matured in that sense, esoterically and through our lives. That's why we have these 3 levels, because these are 3 levels of facing the shadow. And when you face the shadow, you don't just look at it. It looks back at you. There is a repartee going on. Why is my shadow like this? A shadow isn't supposed to contain anything. It's a shadow. What you're actually seeing is the wall, or wherever the light, or and lack thereof, the light-dark boundary is projected. A shadow without a field of projection cannot exist. A shadow should not have essence coming out of it and even reflecting anything because it's a shadow, it absorbs. Or any reflection you get is from the boundary line. That boundary line is where the shadow outlines the body or the actual living form, or in terms of this esoteric metaphor, the soul. So the soul exposed to the greater light, to the greater world, the greater truth, will cast a shadow. And this shadow is what gives it individuality. Otherwise, our souls would all be pure, we'd all be divine identity. Even if we all had different experiences, they would all somehow blend together. And we wouldn't have individuals. We would be like the angels who don't have free will because they're all the divine mind or the divine spirit. Transmuting the shadow involves purifying it, getting your garbage and the parasites that are infesting it out of your shadow where they're hiding. Then they're going to be forced into the light. You're going to sweat them out. Now, this waste is not any tangible essence, it is pure consciousness. And this pure consciousness that we cannot handle because it goes too deep and the trauma associated is too much to absorb, it will cycle back at another time. As it cycles back, it will reveal events in our lives that causes suffering, and it will be the cause of the suffering as it comes back. Point is, as far as all practical purposes are concerned, the shadow is the source of our suffering. It has more information than you, and this thing shouldn't have anything. It should just be a reference outline for your individual soul identity, not the identity of the mind and the ego, which depends on the accumulated information of the 5 senses and your genetic disposition, and a hell of a lot of programming that needs to be taken out. So I'm saying all of these things as an introduction to once again emphasize that there's a deeper level going on, and it isn't just psychological. This is systemic. Jay's dreams reflect working through stuff on all three levels. And maybe there's even a tinge of the fourth or transcendent level coming in there. Now, like I said, if a sentient being comes through, they want more. I mean, and I'm talking about not necessarily one that's fragmented or individuated in an alienated manner. But greed is a perversion of simply realizing that you are not experiencing what your identity had intended to experience when it was still connected to source. It's your dream. And this dream is reflected within the nature that you have attracted. Everything that you experience from the environment is nature, or call it creation or manifestation, including your own being to the point where it's so abstract that all you have is a point of awareness looking out. All of that is a form of layered environmental experience because without environment, there is no relationship. I mean, you have a relationship with another human being, they're part of your environment, if not a focal point. So the environment is basically everything that comes to you that's substantial. In this relationship, human beings can redefine probability, and the shadow has always and will have a key role to play in what we manifest. So you can't leave it running off on its own, doing its own thing, because if it's doing its own thing, it's possessed. And when it's possessed, your subconscious also has inhabitants that are either mutations of your own being, like a cancer or something else that your body comes out with that's destructive, or they are invasions from the environment that has its own afflictions. The pattern of the outer affliction matches the pattern of the inner affliction. That's what creates the attraction. That's how you manifest things, basically, that are not good for you, but they are good for you because ultimately that's the only way you're going to be aware of them. It's part of the learning process of engaging in a relationship with your environment as a whole. And the jinn are there to take us to that level through our own action. So you might say they're teachers, but they teach more than just the mental level. You tap into their offices or powers and make them your own. This method, this approach that we're doing, this alchemy, it teaches you all of that while you're doing it. Somebody might ask, why are you feeding us a bunch of dreams? I want to see the real occultism. I want to inform people of the process through real-time work, which we've been doing anyways. And now Jay is sensitive enough, Tara is sensitive enough, they are moving their subconscious in a way where the dreams that come up are oriented toward the issues that specifically block inner potential from manifesting as they would like it to manifest. And I don't mean their egos would like it. I mean in deep down in that part that has managed to open up to source enough to stabilize its identity in the world. Jay has experiences that are reflecting the human condition and what many people lose for their shadow when their shadow is rising up against them in the form of their relationships, in the form of the events in their lives, in the form of the information they're getting, all of it. There are four arenas, and the first arena is status. The second is territory. The third is finances, and the fourth is health. So, status is a psychological state. This isn't an objective thing, in other words, but it has objective repercussions. And it corresponds to the white horseman of conquest. And it also correlates with the next one, which I call territory, but it's actually power. It's the power to make a difference. And this corresponds to the horsemen of war and conflict. Usually, power and influence mean power over, but there is a form of power called empowerment that translates into you being resourceful enough and capable enough to effect change according to your own will without batting an eyelid, so to speak. You don't exert as much effort the more power you sustain. What I call power or territoriality is the next horseman. That would be the color red, as status is the color white according to the horseman color code. The other horseman is black, and this corresponds to famine in the biblical sense, but it's actually economic assessment, measurement, quantification of resources, the consummation of resources is the ability to be resourceful at its heart. This is where much of where the dreams of Jay are focused. The ability to so-called mark your territory is really the ability to set boundaries, and the shadow teaches us that. Health is different. It's the last one. Usually, when someone or something drains you, and let's just go back to the shadow so we don't point fingers. When the shadow drains you because of unaddressed things in the being, the health can be the first to go. But this usually happens in people who are either broken down already or they've sacrificed enough to maintain status, territory, and finances that the last thing that they haven't really focused on, health, is the most vulnerable. But in Jay's case, he's reconstituted with through the jinn, I'd like to suggest at least, but Jay himself said, look, this thing changed my life. Not only changed my life, but it saved me. It saved my health. He was afraid of getting some kind of health thing that he traced into the levels of vampirism that were already going on. After he addressed this in the psychological level, so now he's okay in his health and he can maintain it. But at the same time, status is something he really doesn't care about. But status is also the relationships that you may have. But if you go off and into the desert or live in a cabin that's in an uninhabited, otherwise natural area, you reject the whole thing of status. It's the one that's easiest to reject. Rejection of territory means you're a slave because you can reject all your status. You can be a nobody in front of other people, but they're not going to be forcing you to do their will. That might happen, but if you have a little bit of empowerment, you can keep it from happening. And this is the key zone because these patterns in the dreams that are going to be revealed are using Jay's own well meaning nature against him. So he accumulates rage, and this rage needs to come out. And so, or be repressed, and then it would go into the health zone. But he's taking care of the health zone, so it can't go there, so it has to go somewhere else. Doesn't know how to access the power directly because there's somebody else holding up that space, or something else, or some kind of programming that is guiding him into a set of actions that will keep him, shall we say, enslaved from within. And he went to the desert to seek freedom from that enslavement. And he went to the desert to cut off connections with people who are closer to him in order to be able to not just figure this out, but experience what it is. So all of the forces on his side, all of these power animals, these power spirits can help him navigate the icy roads. And we will see the icy road metaphor come up again in the dream. I'm done. I'm going to let Jay take it away, and he'll tell you about the first dream, and then we'll move on and connect the dots of the pattern. Take it away, Jay. Tell us.
All righty then. Okay. Tara, Ari, nice to hear you guys' soundbite last week. This is what's been happening with me. A series of dreams and physical real-time encounters with more wildlife. Now, let's remember, because this is all going to come full circle, let's remember about the spider dream that I had either last podcast or the podcast before that. I can't remember. Go listen to them all. Ari suggested not a creative way, but a way, and it was like, oh, wow, that's a good idea, to handle that spider energy. Ari, you can go into details if you want to. If not, it's whatever. I didn't want to go into too much of the organ fusion and cleansing and all that kind of thing, because it would just possibly get confusing for everybody. But let's remember the spider. First dream I had was of there was this red dog, and I couldn't help but think, wow, is this kind of tied into what Tara is dreaming? Probably not. But then again, who knows? Maybe you guys could see a parallel. It was a red dog and little short legs, fuzzy body, super cute, and he was just being tormented by these rats on another other side of a hurricane chain link fence. He's being tormented, and then the red dog changes into a cat. Same cat that's been coming up, the one that my ex-wife rescued, who is kind of connected with Yuki, the Japanese snow goddess, who's helping me out here in the Sonora Desert. And then the cat ends up catching one of the rats and catches it inside of my mosquito net on top of my mattress. What those things are doing outside next to a chain link fence, beyond me. I have no idea. But it was carnage. That little cat was ripping that rat apart. The rat was screaming. It was in pain. It was just horrible. But, cats can be kind of psycho at times. And so, okay, nature, not gonna judge it. The mouse was like peeing and defecating on my mattress, and it was like just horrible, painful, bad experience for the rat and anyone else who were watching, which would be me. And I do not normally have dreams like this. The carnage was just, that's the only word I can think of, was just carnage. The cat changes into a human, and then the rat changes into a cat. And the human was my cousin Stephen. I have no idea why he was there, but he was a raving psychopath, hell-bent on torture and murder, and the cat became the victim. And it was carnage. It's the best word I can come up with, and that comes up later as well. Again, that kind of violence is not, yeah, sure, my dreams can get violent and whatever, but that was over the top.
Thank you, Jay. Let me remind the listeners that the spider represents two things. First, it's a natural connection to the web of life, the environmental web. And second, it represents a predatory animal that has taken over the web and sits at the center and is feeding on Jay in some way. Again, this is a feminine force. So reclaiming the spider through the purification means that you make it your own and you become the identity of the essence at the center of the web. So Jay doesn't just need to remove the spider, he needs to digest it, break it down, and make it his own. And thus his connection to the environment becomes under his control. He gains empowerment from it, in other words. So he's moving to do this in some way. Now there's a response. So here's what happens. Dogs are usually protectors. And the dog was sitting outside of a hurricane fence, which is a boundary layer between Jay's inner territory and the world at large. So there's an encounter with these rats that occurs at this boundary layer, and then the dream shifts and it's inside of his mosquito tent on the mattress that's in his vehicle. This is the place where he sleeps. So what the dream is saying is that, oh, these rats, these scavengers, these thieves, these defecators, you know how rats are and what they represent just by what they are. And these rats essentially have infiltrated into his inner world and are working through his subconscious. So, in real time, in his dream, he has detected an infiltration that is out to take his power, that is out to make an exchange. By gobbling up his power, it then traps its own toxicity. So, it's not only so called nourishment for the rat or what the rat represents, but also fills Jay with toxins that are not really something he identifies with. And yet, karmically speaking, these toxins do need to be processed, and Jay's the only one who can process them because when they are processed, they become raw materials for the psyche to reclaim its own empowerment. He gets nourished by that. However, this cannot keep happening when the toxins are dumped on them because the toxins themselves, there's a level, for example, of you can absorb enough crap and process it. But at the end of the day, there's stuff that you're going to release as well. And this is where the spiritual abstraction comes in, that what you're releasing is pure consciousness, but it's divorced from source, and you can't connect it in your embodied state. You have to give it up. And because it's completely disconnected in its pure consciousness, it can't ground or latch onto anything. It can't sink its claws into your nature where you would feel it as suffering, because it's essentially an initiative of hatred, since it contradicts, it's alienated from source. This is where suffering comes from, as I said. Now, the dog turns into the cat, Yuki, that is meant to protect Jay along icy roads, along slippery slopes, and to maintain his sense of security in life so he can navigate life from top to bottom, the fullness of it. His subconscious is telling him, and maybe the jinn here, because this is a kind of dream that's spelling things out in sequence. You could almost make a narrative out of it. The dog becomes a cat because that is what the protector is also of this kind of nature. And this is stemming from his inner vitality, from his power, from the solar nature, as they would say in alchemy, the anima, the active will. In alchemy, this is also represented by the blood of the lion, for example, the essence, the vital essence of the solar nature of the active will. Something, the rat, is attacking that. It is undermining his will, which is essential to navigate through the icy roads. It is taking away his mojo, in other words. This is the interesting part. Jay would normally have defenses against this. And with the Jin work that he's been doing, he definitely has defenses against this. The chain link fence, boundary layers, the fact that the protectors are much more active, because he never had these protectors before, as far as I know. And I believe his previous work has created enough space and upgrade through level 1 and level 2 where the protector is prominent. You might say, well, shouldn't these be Jinn familiars? Well, he never actively summoned Jinn familiars in a consistent way, except for maybe one, Furkas, who provides information about all the other ones. He's a basic Jinn template among the 72. That's why he's known as the soldier, whereas the other ones have other ranks of governance, like presidents, prelates, earls, etc., kings. What's going on here is that the rats become cats, and it's like, oh, you like these little kitties, do you? Well, how would you feel if your kitty was destroyed by this protector, who becomes some projected as a psychopathic human being that Jay knows, because this animal spirit is intimately tied in, like it's his, like it's a relative or a spiritual sibling of sorts. This other influence that's hidden, and again, Jay intimates what it is in terms of the spider, whatever that spider malevolent influence is that is trying to take over his ability to navigate his environment. And it's taking over because it wants to exchange bad mojo for good mojo, take away his good mojo that can navigate. And it's almost like you're driving a car and somebody takes away your whole, infiltrates your brain and takes out your ability to drive. And then your life goes wrong and you wonder why. Most of the time, this works in the subconscious, but with cultivation, we bring it up to the surface so we can see what's going on. Now, this is interesting because this is something Jay would normally gloss over, I believe. The fact that, well, half your dream is a lie. Half your dream, Jay, is you're actually seeing what's going on with the dog and dealing with this rat infestation that can penetrate through the fence and teleport itself into your sleeping quarters without even going into your vehicle. I mean, it goes directly from outside the fence into the subconscious, into the sleeping dynamic, into his mosquito net. Now, mosquitoes, remember, are parasites too. They suck the blood, and the mosquito net keeps them out. Well, this rat, which is bigger than any mosquito, has teleported within and bypassed. Now, how can that happen? It happens because these emanations may come from somebody familiar, somebody that he has to love or feels, should have an intimate trust and relationship with. So this thing infiltrated through the trust, and now you let the vampire in the house, okay? You invite the vampire in, it's really hard to get them out. So this vampire, represented by a rat, and then the little dog, the little corky dog that he describes, uh, that's essentially a rat chasing dog. So this is a protector from his own vitality, from the deeper part of his active will, connected to the energy body mostly, because as you'll see, as the dreams go on, the red is more vermilion, more orangish. And this means that you're dealing with more rarefied levels, more subtle levels of the psyche, the energy body. It's not a hardcore physical dynamic, which he has focused on, as I said, in order to get the vampires out of it because this was a matter of health. JJ became desperate. It took that much for him to start addressing this issue. But it keeps throwing guilt at him. These kinds of guilt trips, you need to really become so aware of them that you can dismantle them because it's like somebody convincing you with false logical arguments that you should jump off a cliff, and it uses emotional manipulation. So, oh, look, you're hurting me. I'm just a little rat. I'm like the cat. Only imagine your evil cousin, torturing me. So, why are you being so mean to me? Why don't you let me come in and just eat you alive? Come on, man. Don't be a buzzkill. And that's what the dream essentially means. And that's what it reveals. His wisdom, the jinn behind this, and his wisdom are trying to tell him of, look, man, this is what's usually going on. You're out in the desert now. You can replay all these things. The spider's there. We want to understand what the spider's doing. Well, what it's doing is releasing rats, if you can cross the analogy abyss here. Let's see what the other dream says, because all of this is complementary. These dreams accumulate.
Colors keep coming up as well, and this is not a normal thing for me, but I'm going with it. We've got the red with the dog. Oh, and the red dog in the previous dream, at some point, the cat also changed into that same color of red orange, bright orange kind of thing. And then, so anyway, this next dream, I come across this lizard. The lizard is kind of being chased by a cross between a snake and a mongoose. And it was just something else. It was just not even an animal at some point. It was like a very flexible PVC pipe, black, about 2.5 inches in diameter, something like that. But it had eyes, it had a nose, and I thought it was a snake, but that doesn't look like a snake. But it had a mongoose face. I have no idea. Well, I do have some ideas. But anyway, let's put those on the back burner, not even address them. The lizard that this mongoose snake was chasing was very attracted to a purple flower on my shirt. Now, was it an actual flower or was it just a design of the shirt? I don't know. It's kind of both. And the lizard jumped up and rode on top of the flower. And the flower was next to my heart. I was like, come on, lizard, you need to be free. I set the lizard down. He wasn't happy with freedom. And he jumped up on top of my head. And he started riding on top of my head. And then he became part of my head. Kind of like a cartoon. You know how like in a cartoon when, I don't know, like a big steamroller rolls over one of the cartoon characters and they're just kind of like two-dimensional after that. And so that's kind of like that two-dimensional, very flat lizard on top of my head. And he was very content to stay there. Then I arrive at this house that had more cats in it. Okay? There were some other things in the house, but the cats are the most important thing. It was kind of it was a house, but it was a rundown, kind of very small golf course. I don't know. I don't know why golf course. Maybe because I watched Happy Gilmore the night before. Again, same theme. Come on, lizard, you need to be free. Go, be free. So I let the lizard go, and I'm like going, ooh, I hope the cats don't eat him. And then the lizard was like really angry, and he turned kind of silver, but that wasn't a sign of anger. He just turned silver as he was picking up sticks and throwing them at me. That's the sign of anger that I saw. And so all right, so that's that dream right there.
You know, it took me a couple of days to just ponder these dreams, but now that I look at it, it all came together. Because even in the presentation, there was almost a layer of defense that this can't be penetrated. I mean, there's other ways to interpret all of this. The point is to gain an interpretation that's correlated with the jinn by not forcing it, of course, but essentially look into the issue that you're dealing with. This isn't just about, oh, I'm feeling guilty because I'm angry at somebody for some kind of imagined slight. And so, how dare I go too far? This is a parasite telling you to back off because it's feeding or doing its job. And it just happens to be that you're the food. And whether you're violent or not, this is your territory. And you're not dealing with physical things, you're dealing with energies, let's say. You're dealing with spiritual entities, for lack of a better word. And these blend into the psyche as well. So the interpretation that's exclusively psychological is inaccurate. The interpretation that is exclusively other metaphysical, metaphorical is also inaccurate. And the mind cannot comprehend where the line blurs and these two blend together. That's where the shadow tells you you are the individual and the rest of it is the environment. This thing comes in, blurs the lines, and all of a sudden, hey, I'm part of you. No, you're not. You're the environment that I'm relating to. I can relate to it one way, I can relate to it another way, but you're not me. And this is where, if you don't work with a shadow, if you maintain a false self image, that's when narcissism tries to compensate, where I'm so great, I'm this, or whether how you express it doesn't matter. But you don't want to face that boundary line. Sometimes the hatred turns against you, where you feel guilty and shamed and then humbled or whatever, in a false way, of course. And sometimes you turn it around and try to project it to be rid of the burden, so to speak. So, but you're essentially then possessed. At least the victim, the true victim, not the one that's trying to flip the tables and flip the script all the time. The true victim here is still trying to defend and maintain their integrity. And this is what Jay does. He's like, no, I'm engaging in a nonviolent option here. And yet the dream is still giving him this message like, look, man, you're watching a cartoon, okay? You don't have to be worried about the mayhem. It's all CGI. Because this rat that turns into a lizard, the symbolism of a lizard, and I hearken to these Native American cards that used to have animal protectors and stuff and various animal spirits, and they would say, and the lizard is represents illusion. And interestingly enough, the color purple also represents illusion in its negative aspect. In its positive aspect, it's higher mind. That's detached from the physical. It's more idealized mind, but it could also end up in illusion. So there's deception going on. This lizard is a chameleon. It's shifting its colors and its shape. It's shape shifting, but it's really just a deceiver. So it's coming in and it's, oh, I'm being chased by this mongoose who's going to eat me, or this thing. And this PVC pipe mongoose might as well be like those Chinese dragons in the New Year's Day parades. So it's a construct. It's not even real. And he takes this little deceiver, which is really the rat in disguise, and he says, please, come on, be free. This thing doesn't want to be free, so it jumps onto a part of you that resonates with its shape-shifting frequency, something around your very heart, where it usually bites in and causes the guilt and causes all of these things like you're being attacked. It enters your center. That's what it wants to do. And if it can't enter through the heart, it enters through the mind. So you end up encountering a situation. Right now, Jay is in the desert. There's not that many people out there. The ones that are out there, he barely knows. But if he returns to a place where there's people he does know and there's people he's more intimate with or familiar with, or if there's a bond and they have a rat representation, there may be some drama going on, or some subtle innuendos or something where the guilt trip is trying to set in so he can just drop the fence and more vampires can come in. And this time, they're not going to gobble up and kill him, by undermining his health over time, just making him a cripple, if not worse. They're like, oh, we can't get that. Well, then we're going to get the rest. Oh, you don't care about your status? Oh, you do, though. And when you're there playing your music in the bar and somebody is taking your mojo, somebody in the audience, whatever, is taking your mojo to the point that you feel your charisma going down. That's status. That's status consumption. But you go and you're like, I don't care. I don't care about that. Well, you care about the food on your plate, don't you? That's the other one. So it's almost like you're being held hostage. Give up your mojo, which is the vitality. It's in your very genes. It's almost like you're born with a certain genetic heritage that maybe everybody, no, nobody else in your family has. You got it. But that's because there's a soul connection and there's a karmic connection to the shamanic element and the land. And these things for a lot of people represent treasure. That's what I'm saying is that these four things, the four horsemen type deal, it's not the be all and end all of arenas of life, but these are basic, I wouldn't say survival, but instinctive zones that everybody relates to. And we've demonized them. It's like, look, I don't want to be king of the hill and stomp on and be tyrannical. That's not status. Status is just being able to stand upright, not being pelted with rocks, and not being abused, and people actually having respect that I have earned because of my own self-respect. You don't have to do great feats of merit to deserve respect. At the same time, people are people, so you don't demand respect in that way. You respect yourself, and that means you are aware of your boundaries. And if something is trying to break your boundaries down, it does so through the shadow, and it even infects the shadow because the shadow is your boundaries of individuality. And a mystic can break those boundaries and blend with the infinite to the point that there is no more individuality, but there's no more embodiment then. There's no definitions. And that's one way, but that's not the way of creation. In creation, humans seek to enhance individuality and empower it, reconnect it to source, and become whole. And then, esoterically speaking, they become the microcosm in the macrocosm or of the macrocosm. They become like a focal point. If all of the environment for each person is like a lens that lenses in on them, they in turn reflect that outward into a benevolent, nourishing cycle. So the environment benefits, which means other people, animals, plants, the earth, the cosmos, even. And that cycles back to us through each and every one of our relationships, whether it's through a person, place, or thing or event. And it's that encompassing. And our own logic might say, well, I'm more important. No, you don't have to compare yourself to other individuals. If you're whole, you don't need that. Your world is too rich, and you don't even need to be a narcissist because you don't have to validate the truth. The truth is what you have to do, what you are self-respectfully obligated to do for yourself is to call deception where you see it to yourself and act accordingly. So none of this needs to be confrontational. You don't need to go and call anybody you suspect is vampiring you on the carpet. This is an internal thing. You can reinforce your shadow and then they won't have a point of contact. And you know you're doing inner work. You're not blasting anybody. And then all of a sudden you're going to notice changes. And the ones that may be vampiring you will react because all of a sudden their shadows like, feed me. The victim isn't submitting. Make him submit. And that's their problem. Now, if you're more cultivated, more advanced, more in tune, you can help them along. However, the first thing you would need to do is deal with the resentment, which may be justified, or it doesn't matter if it's justified. Because, yeah, it's justified because your nature suffers, but at the same time, there's something in you and of you that's connected to all of this crap. And so it goes round and round. One day you're the victim, the next day the other one's the victim. Then the tables shift again. So you can't go around, oh, look, these guys were always the bad guys. Well, no, there are times when you're the bad guy and the times when you're the good guy, and then flipping back and forth until there's no more good guys left. Because that's what the whole point is. When you've got the parasites infesting, and parasitic adaptation, whatever it is, whether it's natural or not, since we're part of nature, we develop defenses against it. And there's a thing, nature has filled our bodies with these potentialities that if our life force goes down, if we give up on life, we will uh, be infected. And there's factors within the body that bacteria and all kinds of things that just fill it up and eat it alive once all of the defenses go down and the health goes down. And nature says, well, this guy is unsustainable. You can't sustain him on Earth. The life force isn't enough. Unless he or she heals, there's no way. So the little agents of nature take care of it. They wake up. But what if you have the human factor involved that changes the normal parameters of nature's give and take? What if instead you have a human being that harbors parasitic organisms and nurtures them and then sends them out and specifically reinforces them to chew on other people's energy, to bypass defenses, or uses psychological manipulation to do that? You see, there's often this idea that, well, these psychic vampires, they don't know what they're doing. They're in the room, they just feel uplifted, and yeah, or they can be hiding it from themselves. There should be no fear of, well, we're not going to grab them and punish them for this. This isn't what's going on here. You can't do that. Either the person will deny it or you'll be full of shit, because there's more than meets the eye here. You can't just point fingers and weed out the bad elements and then everybody will be fine. If we do away with all the evil people, if we draw a line and say, okay, evil people on this side, gone, there's going to be more evil people popping up because the potentiality lies within individuality. If the root cause isn't transformed, because even if you remove the root cause, you're going to leave an empty space. What's going to inhabit that vacuum? Certainly not anything else, because that root cause is a perversion of something that was meant to be there. It's a mutation. It's a flip around, an inversion, even in the sense of contradiction. Like I said, hatred is the problem on all levels, because if everything is truly the deepest nature of everything is love, then of course it's hatred. And hatred is not the polar opposite of love, it's the contradiction. The two cannot exist even on opposite ends of a spectrum. What kind of spectrum? Oh, I want to be on this side. That's the cool side. Everything else sucks here. Who would want to be on the other side? Well, you need hatred to survive. Everything evolved in the presence of it. Of course, you need it. It's part of the picture. We need to change the picture at a very, very deep level to eliminate it completely. And then we need to, in doing so, maintain our own individuality, our own definition, our own grounding, and maintain the respect and integrity of the nature around us. It isn't easy to do. In fact, we've evolved over eons and eons and beyond even terrestrial life, so we can reach the point where we can do it. But I believe the resources are there. And one of the ways that other parts of being have also, here's something that Jinn intelligence is kind of connected with me, saying humans sucked for a long time. And we hated humans for a long time. And then some of us realized that some humans were not deserving of our hatred, and these humans began to understand deeper layers of causality that then allowed us to understand that, hey, there's more than meets the eye here. Some of us are still so warped, not because humans warped us, but because of the whole condition of existence being embedded with hateful consciousness, alienated consciousness that at its core can only be hateful. And we're talking at a deep level here. And you can't avoid that, the getting into the deeper causality, because it'll run around in circles and psychological theorizing and how to deal with this. And oh, it's not their fault. It's not your. There's no fault here. We have resources on a deep psychoenergetic and spiritual level to be able to address these things. And our religions tell us a lot when you take the dogma and the crap out and the distortions. The same thing with the esoteric wisdom of the world. So, Jay, to recap, you have an infiltrator, a rat in your vitality, and rats are thieves. It wants to take something away from you. Rats also carry illness. They defecate. They carry, so it wants to make you diseased. And in this dream, look what happens. All of a sudden, you go to a house, and the house represents a kind of state of mind. It's like it's not a vehicle that moves. That's more like the energy body or your life force that moves along with the body, but it's an actual frame of presence, and this frame of presence is full of cats, and the cats are all there probably to chase mice. So there's no mice in this place unless the mice turn into the cats, because we're talking shapeshifters here. So something can easily detect your presence, that you're coming close, because deep down you know where this lizard is coming from. So you release the lizard, go be a cat. I know you're a cat. I know you become a person. I know you can turn into anything you want to. But I've seen your true purpose as the rat to actually come in and screw me over, Mr. Parasite. And this other PVC pipe mongoose is just a paper tiger, as they say. But this guy doesn't want to be. He gets pissed off because you've actually returned him home when he's not supposed to go there. You've also realized him, so he's going to do the best he can, or she, or whatever, But since it's not like a thing female animal, let's call him a she, a he. In any case, this lizard wants to jump in your head. It flattens itself out because it's a shapeshifter. It wants to get into your head. It's trying to become one with you. It's trying to convince you that it's part of you. All the while, it really knows that you know deep down that it's not part of you, and it doesn't want to be free. It is free. I mean, its freedom is to get you. Its freedom is to consume you. And I'm not trying to make you defensive, but look at the next dreams here, and you'll see where this concludes and what it's doing to you. Because you've actually come to an erroneous conclusion here, in my honest opinion, because these things, these parasites coming from somewhere through the web, have guilt tripped you into that kind of mindset. All right, so please go on with the next sequence.
And then I had, and we're just going to go through all the dreams real quick. I had another, here comes the color purple again. I had this dream of a purple parasitic style snake. Kind of looked like a sliver of purple onion. As a result of this experience and some other things, I was punished by my mother. And it was like punishment for just a stupid thing that happened that no one should ever be punished for. Really, it was connected with the purple snake, but it was a parasitic snake. So it was like a parasite. It looked like a parasite, like in somebody's body, maybe even my own. And this was connected with another experience in the dream of me trying to relearn how to play basketball, which is a sport. There were 3 sports that I grew up with, or 2 sports, gymnastics and basketball. And then after gymnastics, it was martial arts, and that was around the age of 18. So I did gymnastics for 10 years at a very young age. Super serious about it, also super serious about basketball. And I put a lot of effort trying to learn how to play basketball again with ice skates, because that's what the dream demanded that I do. So doing something that I knew how to do, but in a totally different format and a totally different world. Yeah, I'm probably going to come up with my own answers after I get through rambling about this. But again, these are dreams that have happened over 2 weeks, and I'm trying to get them all in without taking up too much time. Then I have another dream after that, where, and this one's, at least for me, it was a tearjerker. As I tell it, it won't be. But there was this cow, a cow that I befriended in my property in Colorado. And I knew this cow really well. She loved me. That's important. There's the spider that I mentioned earlier. That was a she. I don't know if anybody remembers that or not. I don't even know if I told it, but the spider has always been a she from the dream and all throughout. And so was this cow that was also a whale. So it was a cow whale. It could change back and forth. Now, I wouldn't have even mentioned this dream if it were not for the just tremendous amounts of water in the dream, flooding my land in Colorado, but still leaving us enough land to walk on. And the cow enough land to walk on. But the cow was having a blast, could easily turn into a whale and swim in all the water. And while the water for me is a medium, and I'm sure, Ari, you're going to back me up on this, the land of the dead, the seas of the dead. Here I am talking, the land of the dead, the seas of the dead. That old guy just walked by again, and he's friendly enough, but now he thinks I'm probably a psychopath. Anyway, I think he's far enough away now where I could raise my voice up and keep going. A little bit too much traffic out here, more traffic than I thought. People camping, and anyway, I'll go to the place is beautiful, but a little bit too much people. I didn't realize that would happen until I set camp. And anyway, when I woke up from this dream, and in a half in, half out, sleep awake kind of mode, I told the story, and coyotes were just howling in the background. So coyotes may have something to do with this too. But anyway, another dream I had after that, money was stolen. Money and also my computer. And if you guys don't know that, my computer is how I make money. I work online. So not only my money was taken, but my ability to make money was taken. Now, we'll see what I do about that later. I'm not really sure. Moving on.
Before we move on, Jay, let me just make a few little comments. Okay, at this point, you have two dreams that I remember from this extent here. First of all, the lizard from the previous dream that I forgot to mention turned silver, which is a lunar kind of dynamic. It represents again your life force in a different way, the life force of your mental vitality in a way. The other one is more connected to your uh, psychophysical vitality. It's more, it's the sun that empowers you, that animates you. Think of it that way. The moon is essentially what you receive from that animation and the vitality that's expressed out of you from it. They're two sides of the same coin. In this case, this guy is going to your receptive nature. He's turning silver in order to camouflage itself. That's what I think, and conceal itself in your subconscious. And then you have the dream where you are punished by your mother because you are actually taking this snake parasite thing. You've identified it now. At this point, the dream is like, no, that ain't a lizard. It ain't a rat. It's a damn parasite, a serpentine type parasite, a tapeworm, or who knows what, a leech. And I'm not going to put up with it. And so you were guilt tripped and punished. So your subconscious is tracing, or the jinn with your subconscious are tracing where this guilt trip thing is coming from. And you know you shouldn't even be punished. But the culmination, the next thing is that you learn basketball on ice skates. Now, when I interpreted this, basketball, and maybe it's my own bias, but I got the impression that basketball wasn't your cup of tea, that you were playing it more because of status. Maybe you like the game and all of that, but if status wasn't involved at all, you may not have been motivated. Gymnastics was more your cup of tea in a certain sense, and then martial arts from there. That whole continuity of working on yourself in that sense. Basketball is a team sport, and it requires a lot of skill, of course. And if you don't learn it, you got to go relearn it. Now, you got to learn how to play the game. That's what they're telling you. And this time, you got to learn because your dream was making you do this. No, the dream, it wasn't the dream, it was the guilt trip that was working on your behavior and your motivations. And that's the thing. If you have are completely conscious of something like that, it's not a it can't work on you anymore. I mean, you watch it working on you and you will automatically do something about it because it's instinctive. But when it's subconscious, you don't want to face it because it's always threatening you with something worse than facing it. Yeah, put up with it, you know. And a lot of victims do that. Gaslighting does that to people. They doubt themselves. Uh, there's a whole bunch of behavioral manipulations, and I'm not talking about people, I'm talking about these parasitic manifestations. Let's not point fingers at people. It's bad form because the person has their own subconscious, and it just doesn't help. But this may be coming out of a person who has a motive and will not change whether they are informed or not. They don't care. I'm surviving or I'm doing it or it's easier for me. Who cares? And if you don't care, then you don't empathize. And if you can't empathize, the golden rule doesn't apply. And that means some deep part that would have been an evolving soul is either seriously repressed or missing. Now, the situation in that case is that the lizard was throwing sticks at you. It went and cried home to mama. Mama punished you, whatever the mother represented. But then here's where higher intelligence probably came in. It's like, yeah, instead of having Yuki help you to navigate the icy roads, you got to wear ice skates and do it yourself, playing the game. Do the best you can, even though you're going to be at a disadvantage. But the higher self comes in into a deeper level because it's saying, look, your guilt is coming from the fact that as a shamanic personality, you have a tremendous respect for nature and that you realize the divine feminine of nature instinctively. So if you have a dark feminine presence, a shadow feminine parasitic presence, and these do exist, and they are infiltrated with hatred to the point that it's really the hatred or the spirit or the consciousness here that's driving them. It's not the essence of the nature. And that distinction has confused many people on a very deep level, higher entities as well, because it's not visible unless you're here in embodiment. And even then, there's so many manipulative things that it's gone unnoticed of how severe it is. And people who usually point things out like that, there's a level 3 retaliation against them as if it's karma, but it's really this parasitic presence that many people have adopted as their way of life. And it's unsustainable, by the way, over generations, but it does cause a lot of it's one of the symptoms of what's going on this planet. Now, the situation here is that you don't have to feel guilty because you don't have hatred against the true feminine. You respect nature. Even the spider was like, oh, spiders, they're actually natural predators and all of that. Well, yeah, but when you're the prey, it's a different story. So once you absolve yourself from putting yourself in the position or being allowed to be put in the position of being the prey, then it's a different story. Then you can have respect. then you can mark your boundaries, the boundaries that your shadow gives you, true shadow, not the one that's causing you suffering or working against you. It's not the bad or evil side. It has nothing to do with that in its nature, as we said. What's going on instead is that there is an infiltration here, and this infiltration is writing the resentment you feel against being abused, against being psychically violated and undermined to the point that even your finances are threatened on some level. Your fortune, your means, who knows? Anything can happen. So it's just turning toward that. And that's what the original rat represented, something that wanted to go there. Oh, I want to get, the lion's share. Who knows what? The point is that it's not the divine feminine's fault. There are natural protectors. Again, Yuki is a female cat. Who knows what this dog was, male or female? This cow represents the feminine prosperity dynamic. Cows represent prosperity. So, prosperity, vitality, and fertility, and all in all, positive abundance. And then the cow simply shapeshifted without deception, though. These spirits naturally do that. It shifted from one environment, the terrestrial environment, into an aquatic environment and became its corresponding animal, the whale. I know there's animals called sea cows, but essentially a whale has a similar dynamic. It's a mammal, and if humans could herd whales, they did. They almost herded them to extinction. But the whale also represents an abundance and an ability to navigate not just the icy roads, but the waters. And like you said, waters represent, well, you don't have to call it the land of the dead. You can call it the underworld or the ether realm. Essentially, it's not a physical dynamic, but it's more made of some kind of energetic zone. It's a different level. It's a more subtle level, but you're still aware of it. It just doesn't manifest physically, but it manifests through physicality, and it manifests also on its own. It's its own world. When you aren't embodied physically, and it's like people who pass on, then that world seems very real to you, even though it's relative, and eventually it starts becoming less and less real as you go along. You don't just it can't become the new real world. The physical always is there in a more gravitating and uncompact manner. That's where we want to be. We're not here by accident, in other words. So this element is telling you, like, look, abundance and prosperity are just like the Yuki protector navigator or the dog protector navigator, and you have this spirit of abundance that can navigate the ethers, the underworld, the subconscious, the conscious, and all of that. Your vitality, the area of your deeper psyche, and it has no deceptive aspect. And this comes in order to give you a lesson in the fact that you don't have to play the game anymore. Remember the dream with the apocalyptic graveyard and the grandma with the Gatling gun and wanting to be join the group in order to go do a raid, but it's not you. Even the Richie Cunningham, lowest of the low, could do it better than you or had more energy than you and stuff like that. So you want to go back to the drawing board and learn new rules of socializing that the parasites themselves manipulate easily so they can feed on you better, and so your life can be more miserable and limited. And the Jenner is saying, look, here it is. And it's all a result, not directly, it's a result because it's time and you're going to the desert for this explicit reason, but the gin work itself is bringing it out. That includes the fusion alchemy. But the fusion alchemy on its own is a mechanical exercise of purification. It's like an emotional, energetic version of doing physical exercising and sweating it out and stuff like that. It's a form of therapy. Whereas the jinn work actually repatterns your own potential into what it could be, and it points out where you're being compromised. So the repatterning can take place. You are stimulating your breath, your energy, your vitality, because at this point it's breath work that matters. You're at the chi level, you're at the prana level. And this pranic environment is full of patterns that are debilitating you, and your augmentation of it is stimulating where the parasite is actually feeding. And before you move to the next level, it's not like, well, this has got to change your master. You need to at least put things in perspective and create an intention of how you're going to proceed. For example, I don't want to be guilty anymore. I don't blame nature for doing this, and some parasite screaming it's just surviving like anything else when it's an artificial construct. And it showed you that it's an artificial construct. It turned into all kinds of cartoon things or PVC pipes. It's not part of nature. It's an alien force that's created by an imbalance, or rather the presence of alienation, of alienated consciousness, whether it's in a human mind and you call him a psychopath, or where it's floating out in the ethers as an independent being, or whether it's a super intelligence known as a fallen angel, whatever, the full spectrum. It can embody many things, but it often makes an individual incapable of being autonomous psychically, of nourishing themselves in a natural relationship with the environment without having to compromise it, without having to crap on it, because its digestion is uh, natural and healthy. When your psychic digestion is healthy, you can deal with things, but it's been compromised. So we're bringing it back to health. And when we do that, then it will be a lot easier to draw in the powers of the jinn or the offices of the jinn and apply them directly into our environmental context. And I don't even think that you need to apply them specifically in this, that, and the other. It depends on the person. But in this system, and in the version that I have organized that's more palatable, because your experiences have helped a lot in organizing the situation in such a way that you can digest it, and Tara can digest it. Also, her things as well, because like I said before, there when you upset the apple cart, it seems that, oh, all these things are going to go haywire. I'm not doing the prim and proper. Well, that's a threat, and it's always going to be a threat, but it doesn't mean it's a real one. It can be a bluff. But you don't take it by chance. You upgrade when you're upgrading yourself, you're doing it in such a way, and there's so many alliances because nature, the true environment, and I'm not just talking about nature, the animals and the trees, I mean the ethers, the natural ethers recognize what's going on. And they are a part of you. They are a part of your organismic nature and all of our natures as an individual within an environment, because environment, individual, they form a whole. It's the body of manifestation itself. You go to source, there is no environment. There's only and really self is an environment blend into a single thing. Here there's the distinction, and we can have relationships with other sources of individuality or environments, and in any number of ways. And all of it can be positive, all of it can lead to abundance. Human beings, if they can bypass nature and destroy the planet, they can certainly augment nature in a way that it doesn't have to compromise to sustain its balance. Or it can compromise in a way that's not debilitating, at least at first. All right, let's go to the final presentation here and see what the last dreams have and what conclusions we can come up with before we uh, call it a day.
And then it turns into one of those dreams where everybody on the first story gets eaten alive, and I'm trying to run upstairs, but the stairs aren't there, so I'm just struggling in midair, trying to with no grounding whatsoever, just trying to get a little higher and a little higher. I finally make it into the room, no grounding whatsoever. Yeah. So anyway, I make it up to the other room. And then the bear comes in, and then I wake up, but it's not in like some kind of nightmare zone or anything like that. I just kind of woke up. Now, the money, or the dream where I got the money stolen from me and my computer, which is my ability to make money, I woke up saying the word no. Wasn't screaming it, I was just saying it. So, now, out of the dream world into reality, we know the dog was colored red. The cat also ended up being colored red and or bright orange. Both animals, bright orange. And I'm I could make this into a longer, more funny story, and I think I may do that the next soundbite. But anyway, I saw this really big, and just I think I camped next to the little girl's home, a tarantula hawk. Dun 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 dun. So anyway, I think this tarantula hawk, which is a wasp that kills tarantulas, is a sign that I think the spider problem may be handled. Although I'm continuing to do the visualization and the organ fusion meditations that Ari suggested to handle the spider energy, because if there's any left, yeah, these are things you want to take care of. Or maybe that's taken care of and something new has to come up. But anyway, that tarantula hawk, yeah, I keep wanting to call it a murder hornet. I don't know why, but it's just, to see them fly, for me, is just that's a scary animal. So, but I do feel that she showed up to signify that, hey, that spider's taken care of. And then to back that up, I saw a hawk in the air today, which I've never seen this kind of hawk before. Had to look it up. Super common out here in Arizona. But it was a red-tailed hawk. And the reason I took out my binoculars and took a really good second look at the thing, because it had such a bright red tail, and it shined in the light just at the right time. And here comes that bright orange red color again. And that's about it. Boom. Dr. J out.
I left some parts out, and I'm going to supplement them right now to give a kind of concluding remarks thing, because the dream eventually shifts. The one with the bears, first of all, the coyotes howling, that was a real event. And this synchronized with the perception of the ocean as the land of the dead, as the underworld, because coyotes are kind of related to jackals, and the jackals in Egyptian mythology had to do with the dead because they ate corpses. And I bet coyotes eat corpses too. So they're scavengers. And that's also part of the digestive psychic digestion process. The corpses decay and they're eaten by these animals. Otherwise, you'd be full of infestations. So you have a natural process. And here's the thing, normally somebody would say a tarantula hawk and then a tarantula and, oh, yuck, yuck. And the thing is, yeah, this is the shamanic way, because your spirits, the protecting spirits, may be brutal, but they're natural. And so if somebody's complaining about it, well, that's how animals act. You have animal spirits. You once identified with this movie called The Beastmaster. I had said that again. And basically, the animals were always tame around. Wild animals to other people, and that person can connect with them. And in the shamanic metaphor, that comes as animal spirit affinity. And the jinn are telling you this. Is like, well, there's no need for jinn to come out and present themselves when your true nature is naturally connected to animal spirits. And these animal spirits are not these PVC pipe cartoon characters that other beings or maybe humans connect with, these parasites that are shapeshifters. However, your animal spirits also are. And the spider has been taken care of. It's just that your own subconscious couldn't, you wouldn't see this in the dream so much because it would have been turned around against you. All of a sudden the spider would have turned into a person, and the tarantula hawk would have turned into a butterfly, and or whatever, and or the spider would have turned into bug spray, and the tarantula hawk into a butterfly, and that was it. Or a fly swatter would be hitting the fly. Anyways, it would constantly attempt to flip the script around as it was being constructed by your subconscious to notify you. Infiltration directly in the perception process and in the digestion process where the dreams come out, where you ruminate or calculate what's going on and stuff. So, this whole situation is telling you that, yeah, you have the means to resolve it. And this whole drama of guilt and everything else is being worked through, and their jinn are helping you with this. It remains to be seen because at the end of the day, you want to know if a negative event is going to happen or not. And the negative event has probably been mitigated, but you've now entered into the mechanism of how this infiltration that you perceived is actually working and what's behind it. It all claims to be nature, but it isn't really. Part of the part of nature that is claiming to be nature that's working against you is unbalanced, and that's not because it just happens to be you and it suits you. No, it's because there are other forces in nature that are juxtaposing it and saying, look, we're on your side. We're not all against you. And yet, the Hogwarts females from your previous dream, the little club of witches, let's just say metaphorically speaking, is claiming connection to nature. And how dare you compete? So you have no part of it. Maybe the whole male female polarity thing is being used in order to just, well, you're a man. Well, if it wasn't that, it'd be something else. So even amongst women, oh, you're that woman, you're a blonde, so us brunettes get to, I don't know. But there's always a kind of dividing, polarizing line here that's trying to push you on the loser side. And nature is saying, no, these spirits are like, no, you can navigate the ice. You don't have to learn basketball. You don't have to go and learn these games people play. This isn't a skill like that. It's not, and you don't have to equate basketball with this dragon gin work. It's totally different things. It's the dragon gin work or this gin work is far more encompassing and applies to your life, whereas basketball just is your life in that sense. It's your relations, and they who succeed in the game gain status, and then they can gain everything else. But they usually find that if they can sucker somebody in who has good mojo and use the game to suck that mojo out or repress it and take their place, so to speak, in that way. But it's an attitude. Cut the parasites off, and the people who are parasitic will be almost like somebody who has their addiction. They're addicted to something and they got their substance cut off. So they're going to go through withdrawal symptoms. Physical parasites are notorious. And regular ones, something we all have inside of us, they affect our behavior. They make us crave the foods that they want to eat, like sugars and carbs, and they will, if we don't feed them appropriately, they're going to make us feel bad. There's other parasites that affect the mind even more to continue their cycle. So how much less do psychic parasites affect you? And they affect you in the same way that somebody rides a horse. They stick a muzzle on you with spikes, not that it's some sadistic rider of a horse, and spurs, and constantly poke and prod you and make you hurt and threaten you and make you emotionally go through backflips in order to do their thing. And eventually, trial and error will teach you how to behave and you become tame. And if a parasite is aligned with a human being, they can use that in order to manipulate other people. Excuses don't matter, and there is no, shall we say, nature doesn't look at things in the sense of, oh, you have committed a crime, now you shall be punished. Nature just says, stop doing that. This is not going to be happening. And if it does happen, then we're too weak to protect it. So we shouldn't be here anyways. And if we're that weak, we can find a way to get stronger. Human beings are there to overcome these compromises, and they can be put in a position to reinforce nature, to help rebalance nature, and to give nature a higher level of balance, even. And besides that, they can also experience their own lives in relationship to the world according to their own idealized dream that's evolving from something compromised where you can barely notice what the original dream is to a clearer version of itself that can be actualized. So the bears finally are really interesting because I think the bears are level three. I think what you tuned into through the parasite and everything else is a yin yang process that's very aggressive. You do martial arts, right? You do Tai Chi, and the Tai Chi symbol has the black and the white. The white is the yang and the black is the yin. So you have two bears, the black and the white. Look at the Masonic checkerboard form, black and white squares, ups and downs. Think of it as a waveform. So these are two dynamics that actually create a vortex, and they're seeking mayhem in human communities. And are they protectors of you? I don't know. I think you may perceive it that way, and you may view it in terms of, well, it's not going to mess with me, and I'm not going to get in it, but it's maybe over the top. Well, the over the top nature is because something nasty has triggered those bears because these are natural forces as well. And sometimes bears represent the pole star, the pole axis, because you have the big and little dippers. And you have these a yin and imagine a Tai Chi form above the Earth's axis, over the North Pole, shall we say, and the whole rotation of the planet, which represents the fate, the destiny of the planet, where we're going time wise. So you're seeing a future prediction here. And somebody might think that, holy cow, this guy's got a really good imagination making all this shit up. But it's not. I don't think I had to look at this for a couple of days, and I wasn't analyzing the symbols here. I was just touching base with various points, and then the whole Jinn awareness dynamic. And how do I know again it's Jinn awareness? Well, how does Tara know her dreams have the Jinn vibe? And even Jay at times. Because there's a specific signature here that's very subtle at this level. In other words, you don't have a big manifestation of a Wizard of Oz, all powerful Oz, screaming dramatically how great he is and all of this, and bow down to me and echoing chambers. It's very humble, actually. And it's in the sense that it's unassuming and very pragmatic. And it's a knowing here that, oh, there's a pattern. And this parasite is making itself here. You've actually manifested it, Jay. I don't say you actualized it, made it real, but you've given it coherence so it can be understood even by me and how it's operating. So in that sense, since I've had this kind of practice, and because I'm a curious type, and the jinn naturally gravitated to this tendency of mine to understand things and put them in a way that's not compromising. Because whenever you end up with an explanation, oh well, that's the way it is, you just got to suck it up. No, that's unacceptable. You don't got to suck it up. We're human beings. We're meant to work through things and to find solutions here. We're meant to design and redesign something that's not working. We don't redesign the wheel, we fix it. We make it a coherent wheel again. If it's chopped up into little pieces, we know that it represents a wheel. Or if it never existed before, then we understand a need and we fill that need accordingly. And it's not done arbitrarily. So you're learning a form of creativity, of psychic creativity that shamans have had to a certain degree, but in your case, and maybe mine and Tara's, it needs an upgrade because the collective conditions are not what they used to be. You got tremendous natural forces descending on the planet, and these forces are threatening violence not because they're ravenous or whatever, but because they have always been there and they have been misapplied and tormented, you might say. So this isn't like an evil thing. Evil or hatred or psychopathy in terms of human influences may be driving it, but these are natural forces gone insane. The black and white kind of signifies that, and they may be manipulated. So if you want the nasty shit to stop in the world, you can harness the forces and deflate them by bringing them into a position where sanity can prevail, redeeming them, in other words. And that's a tall order. That's something that you probably understood in the dream is above your pay grade at this point. So I prefer to make sure that the evolution of it is seamless. That means that there are no gaps. That means that you don't reach a point where, oh shit, I should have done all of this in the past and I didn't, and now I can't do this now. So I'm covering up all of the potholes, shall we say, and explanations aside, to smooth out the path so you'll be able to move through it. Because in our private communications, as soon as I get the time here, I'm going to give you the organization of how the 36 decans of the zodiac chart, which the jinn come through, essentially, or they open up these portals of possibility for us. And these possibilities or energies of expression and actualization, they can come off in a certain way and we can apply them directly, or they can be an ideal form of learning, like training wheels. And that will ensure that you can take the training wheels off and that you won't fall. But you don't want to just go ahead before you can ride a bicycle or even a tricycle. You jump on into the 1000 cc horsepower, whatever, some giant motorcycle and rev it to the pedal to the metal, so to speak. You'll crash. And it's adapting your organism and your psyche, the mind, the body, the energy body, especially into the conditions necessary to face things. Now, notice I'm not giving any detail and I'm not going, how to face things. No, this isn't about that. This is about being in shape so your instinct can kick in because each of us has a natural instinct of where we want to go, what we want to do, what we truly want to accomplish. That's going to fulfill us. And it's not just career doesn't cut it. That's just one sector. Relationship on its own doesn't cut it. It's everything all at once. Everything represents something. It's our song of destiny, what we sing into the world that is us. And it's usually out of tune because we got parasites in our throats, metaphorically speaking. And those are the people who have a connection enough to source, even if it's subconscious or unconscious, but they're not on the side of hatred, resentment. They haven't let that overtake them, and they're not repressing it either. They may not be having a good time in life because if you don't repress it and you don't, join it, well, you'll have to fight it or deal with it. And even learn that, well, it's not quite a fighting as you fight things physically. This is a whole different level of digestion. And you got to strengthen your digestive system and your immune system, psychically speaking, before you can do that. Anyways, that's it for the dreams. So these dreams range from the psychological level and spread all the way through the magical or relationship level. And that's where I think the money situation comes in. Oh, you're going to lose money or your livelihood and all of that. And then it goes into the third situation of the collective bear monsters wreaking havoc. None of this is written in stone. This is just, well, your version of the bears coming down trickles down into the financial situation that also connects to your personal life and your psyche because of all this vampirism. You don't want to get plugged into things that the land can protect you from. That's the whole navigating the AC roads. If you're wearing ice skates and trying to play basketball and you got these two monster bears after you, you're not going to make it. You need the your actual land support because your environment is, I won't say it's part of you, but it's your friend, and it should be. And then life goes well because you fuel the environment, you recognize it. Just simple human appreciation goes a really long way where the environment is concerned, especially when it's done deeply and there's a deep energy level. You cultivate your deep energies with the Tai Chi that you do and all of that, and it actually connects with the land. There are patterns that they like, just like an animal likes you, for example, and is connected. And animals feel the subtle changes in energies and are prompted to just fly by you, which happens to be at the right time that you need to affirm something. So I'm a little stricter in my interpretations, and I'll go over the line into controversial territory because sometimes that's where we need to go. It doesn't mean we're going to go off the deep end and start doing things that we're going to regret. It just means that, look, this has been going on for way too long. And right now, the earth is in a situation, and human society is in a situation where we don't want to play it safe anymore in a way that we know that hasn't worked in the past. We want to play it safe in a way that's reflective of what our deeper intuition tells us, because we're reaching a point in society where, especially with AI and all of that, you can't trust your eyes, you can't trust your ears, where the media is concerned. You don't know what's fabricated, or at least it's heading that way. What's censored? Information can disappear at the drop of a hat. All of a sudden, the past might not exist anymore as far as, records are concerned, and something else might take its place. How do you know the difference? How can you tell um, that the shape shifting influences in your life aren't manipulating you? You can, and there's ways to move through that because it's only on a certain level. And remember, parasites, whether they're human entities or the principle itself or just pure consciousness, these dynamics, I'll call them dynamics because so I don't use any other labels because they are energized, and sometimes they're sentient, sometimes they're just blind forces driven by something else that itself is sentient and that uh, is not good. So this is what we had to say today. And Jay's wealthy dreamscape did give a very long, if you could listen to this from start to finish, and some of these symbols, if you want to see like what the alchemical interpretation is, go to my Substack at acgeorge.substack.com, and you'll see that there's some essays called Revelations in Alchemy, and I describe some of these things. And the jinn are very alchemical. They, whoever compiled it and the tradition behind it, just the symbolism is applied to Western alchemy as well to a certain degree, like the metals and the planets associated with the jinn ranks, which isn't done in other grimoires. I haven't seen it, at least personally. So at least here you have the association, and the jinn themselves are coherent with that association, and wherever it pops up, I find that it's valid when you do this kind of work, um, to have a ready-made understanding of alchemy, so to speak, and its own symbolism, and see how that applies esoterically. It's the psychological template of the archetypes themselves, and by archetypes I just mean the patterns that are expressed in the system, in the jinn system. So I've rambled on long enough, of course, and I hope the listeners, have enjoyed this, or at least have kept on. And maybe if you haven't understood this, it's not that hard, really. The problem would be to misunderstand it, and that would be my bad, of course, because I'm not explaining it clearly enough. But as we move on, these things clarify, because more is coming to the surface, and we'll see how it goes. Every explanation and every feedback we have with Jay and Tara kind of prompts the next cycle. So without further delay, Magus out.